Hello again, people, and welcome to the ultimate analysis of Oneshot. If you have been a part of my channel for any extended period of time, you would have seen many instances of Oneshot being injected into my videos. This has had me wondering, if I am such a self-proclaimed Oneshot mega fan, then why have I not made a video about it? Haha, trick question. I did make a Oneshot video, like 2 years ago. Oneshot follows the story of a young child named Nico and their journey through this world that is not their own. Wow, that literal $30 microphone is delightful, isn't it? I am going to carry out the ultimate analysis of Oneshot. Originally released in 2014, this game has captivated those who played it with the discombobulation of previously understood narratives in many RPG games before it. The meta-narrative of this game involves you, the player, joining the main character on the adventure which takes place. Using this storytelling strategy, Oneshot has achieved a level of immersion and endearment to story that has remained unmatched compared to every other RPG game I have ever played. Today, I will analyze everything about this game, its characters, its settings, its overall message, themes, and meta-narrative. You like meta-narratives, right? Yeah, you do, you little freak. This video will cover every facet of this game. Oneshot has been released over the years in 3 main versions. In this video, the version we will be mainly concerned with today is the World Machine Edition, which will hopefully release alongside this video. The other versions will be referenced, but for the most part, we will be concerned with the World Machine Edition. With all that out of the way, I will now commit the cardinal sin of every Oneshot fan. I will now play the game a second time. Turning on the game, you will not see a main menu, but rather a startup sequence. You can see all of the game's sound files and texture files being loaded during this sequence. This is the World Machine, a fully functional operating system created for the purpose of playing this game. No, really. This system works exactly like a super sparse version of Windows. And it is the vehicle which will allow you to explore the world of Oneshot going forward. But don't get too comfortable. You're just visiting right now. The addition of the World Machine offers a level of world building that wasn't present in the previous versions. However, this comes at a hefty cost. Let me explain what I mean by this by comparing this game's intro to the intro of the Steam version. In the 2016 version of Oneshot, it would start up like any normal RPG. From the beginning, Oneshot caught my attention with just its menu. The droning music which plays in the main menu invokes a sense of dread. But the almost angelic waves in the background gives this feeling of support at the same time. As these waves fill the background, you get this sensation of comfort. The experience which lies before you will be filled with a melancholic spirit. Nevertheless, you will have someone to support you during this experience. The game opens and immediately explains its controls. Pressing F8 will put the game into full screen mode. However, this game tells you that it is best experienced in window mode. Within this mysterious darkness wakes a child with cat-like features. This is Nico.
Go. Do a crime.
Nico awakens in this dark room. A cacophonous mixture of scaling tones and the plucking of strings echoes in the background to match the dark and desperate nature of this world. This room is bleak and decrepit. The boards in the floor have rotted away, and the single window barely allows any light to enter. Beside Nico is a computer. Interacting with the computer will prompt you to enter an access code. Both the doors in this room are locked. Nico is trapped until you can figure out how to leave. On the far side of the room is a TV remote, which Nico picks up. In the original 2014 version of this game, the remote was actually located underneath a rug in the center of the room. This was changed because people had a difficult time finding it. Equipping the remote from the inventory screen while next to the window will allow you to see what numbers are visible. Using this 4-digit code, you can now access the computer. Okay, let's see. Okay, it's giving me some vague story information. Okay, my mission is to help Nico leave. Okay, that seems easy enough. Yeah, that's right. Everybody gangster until their computer starts talking to them. This moment is the coveted holy crap moment that any and all one-shot fans can look back on with fondness. You have no idea how much money I would pay to go back in time just to see my reaction to this moment. I cannot stress enough how striking this reveal was. Not only does this establish the capabilities of all of the ways this game can mess with your computer, but it also establishes the stakes of this story. You only have one shot. You don't know what the specifics of this one shot is, but by knowing that, you will only have one chance to play this game correctly. If it hasn't been made clear as to why I prefer the older version yet, let me explain this properly. In the World Machine Edition, you are taken directly into the World Machine operating system. As soon as the OS finishes loading the game, unceremoniously it begins to talk to you right then and there. Instead of the game making alterations and invading your own computer, the game has been presented with its own operating system. In the Steam version, this reveal comes in the form of an error message. The message that appears takes on the form of a standard Windows text box. The person who is talking to you is not using the game to do so, but rather your own computer. It's communicating in such a way that only you can see, so it uses whatever code from your operating system it can to do so. Things are personal now. The story is no longer confined to the game. It is happening on your computer, and it has the ability to take you out of the game if it wants to. The World Machine Edition loses a lot of these aspects in this reveal. Even the text box that pops up in this message looks very generic, like it's 100% a functional part of the game. With the addition of the World Machine, a certain level of intrigue was lost in the story of One-Shot. Yes, it can be annoying when the game changes your desktop wallpaper for the sake of a puzzle. But isn't it so freaking cool that it can do that? This aspect of the original game can be unsettling and almost disruptive, but that is exactly what made the game memorable. It's not a big issue, I just wanted to share my thoughts on this change. Now that the gloves are off and it has been revealed that we are not playing a regular game anymore, we can begin my analysis of this game's meta-narrative. To begin, let's discuss the concept of meta-narratives. You have a regular narrative, which is a way of presenting or understanding a situation or a series of events, most notably, a story. If you have recounted events at any point, either fictitious or not, you have produced a narrative. Enter the meta-narrative, which is a narrative that explores or experiments with the idea of storytelling, mostly by directly referencing what is happening is in fact a story. This is Oxford's definition of meta-narrative, by the way. Within any exemplary version of a video game, we can find a narrative, sometimes several. The characters, plot, themes, and settings all work together to develop this narrative to its conclusion. All the way down to its most simple of examples, even a game of Pong can be considered a narrative. The narrative begins with the ball in the center of the ring, and the narrative ends when one player scores a goal, and then it repeats. A repetitive narrative, but a narrative nonetheless. Narratives are typically comprised of a beginning, middle, and an end. Meta-narratives are not so alien compared to regular narratives in that regard. The obvious difference you find is the self-reflecting, self-identifying, and at times self-criticizing nature of these specific narratives. One-Shot offers you a narrative in which you guide a young child through a dying world, but simultaneously creating a place in this narrative for you. The game acknowledges you. You are now a part of this narrative, and with that, your perspective on this world is greater than all others. Simultaneously, much like the characters in this story, you are now at the mercy of this narrative as well. The game from here on will add and change things on your computer. At times, it will be borderline malicious and invasive with its practices. This is all a way to show you that you are no longer fully in control. The computer turns off and the door is now unlocked. Walking into the left room will bring you to a bathroom. Within the bathroom is an old and dry plant. The plant is so delicate, Nico can remove a branch like it's nothing. Walking outside will bring you to the rest of the house, which is just as disheveled. To Nico's left, you will see a broken TV and a fireplace. Moving further into the house will bring you to the kitchen area. The faucet does not work, but the refrigerator contains a single bottle of alcohol. This would probably be a good time to mention that there is a running joke in the one-shot community where Nico is a known arsonist. No, really. We now have a fuel and a flammable object. Now all we need is a source for the ignition. Using the TV to ignite the alcohol-soaked branch will light the branch on fire. When Nico places the torch inside the fireplace, it illuminates the entire room with a blue light. You may not have noticed this when you played One-Shot for the first time, but when you completed this first puzzle, you inadvertently had the game spoiled for you. The combination of the three items bringing light to this room are parallels to the events in the game. The bottle of alcohol represents the barrens. As in the northern section, toxic chemicals spew out of these geysers. Later, you will solve a puzzle in the barrens by using this bottle to store this toxic gas. The branch represents the glen as it is filled with many trees. The delicate structure of the branch and the fact that it snaps off of the plant with ease is a direct parallel to how the land in the glen is beginning to break away. And of course, this leads us to the TV being the representation of Refuge, a city of advanced technology that is not functioning as intended. In combining all of these three items, we have symbolically completed the game, right here and now. You can even see this chimney as a representation of the tower, as you are literally restoring light to it, and a chimney usually stretches far above a house. Illuminating the room with the flame will reveal a glimmering object on the floor. Using the key to the basement, Nico enters this dark stairwell. The music shifts. First it shifts downward to invoke a sense of caution, but as you delve deeper into the basement, the music picks up again. On the ground lies a dull and inert light bulb. As soon as Nico touches the light bulb, it springs to life, enveloping the once dark room with a sea of solar rays. Lighthearted and upbeat music plays to signify an end, or rather, a beginning. Where before your ability to progress was limited by the darkness of this world, you now have the means to navigate it unimpeded by your ability to see. With this newfound power of light, Nico can now interact with the door at the other end of the room. However, instead of simply walking through the door, the light engulfs the screen, and Nico is now transported to a rundown building, filled with what's left of old computers. The area we just walked through is referred to as the starting area. I have always wondered what this area truly is, its place in the world. I have my theories, but good news, we'll actually come back to this area at the very end of the game. For now, let's press on to the barrens. Walking outside of the old and rundown building brings Nico to an equally cheerless sight. All you can see is the looming umbra of the tower. A massive vertical shot is used to establish just how insurmountable your task really is. Welcome to the barrens, a mostly empty desert dotted with what remains of a once successful mining operation. The aesthetics of the barrens were inspired by the surface of the moon. Several craters filled the landscape, and there is little to no life here. Moving right will bring you to the outpost area, which is also the home of our first side character, Prophetbot. For the sake of covering my bases, I will be analyzing characters that carry story significance. Occasionally, the analysis of a character will require me to jump forward and backward in the story, so forgive me if continuity is not always maintained when I analyze these characters. You're probably wondering why I haven't analyzed Nico yet. Because I'm saving the best for last, obviously. One could argue the existence of Prophetbot is a trope. It is something that could be considered lazy. The game might as well include a sign right next to them saying, "Information NPC here. Get all of your plot information for free." Yes, his one and only purpose is to explain to Nico and the player plot-relevant information. However, this one-track-minded existence is exactly what sets up other, more deeper themes and plot points in the future. Prophetbot is your standard, stereotypical robot. He does what he is told, and he does it with a smile on his face. He does it with a smile on his screen. He does it by making his electronic eye slightly wider and making stars form around his face. Yeah, let's go with that. Prophetbot's one and only purpose is done so intentionally to introduce us to the idea of being tamed. Prophet waits here alone and will continue to wait here until the Messiah comes forth, which they have. You can ask Prophetbot 4 questions, which when asked he will explain the circumstances of this narrative. First, the setting. Prophetbot explains the current state of the world. It is dark, it is dim, but these truths were not always the case. With further detail, Prophet explains that the world itself is trisected. The current area is referred to as the barrens for obvious reasons. The prominent colors of these areas, red, green, and blue, are based off the RGB colors. Red, blue, and green are the 3 primary colors of light and how we perceive it. The human eye contains these light-sensing cells called cones. There are L cones, M cones, and S cones. Each of these cones are able to take in a different type of light. Hey, watch this. Wabam! The combinations of these colors are CMY, or cyan, magenta, yellow. The world reflects this design for 2 major reasons. 1, there is a theme of light in this game, and the restoration of such, but also, because of a certain reveal that comes later, that this world is simply something that is being run on an actual computer. More on that in a minute. Asking Prophet about this little interesting light bulb will reveal it to be the sun of this world. This world currently does not have a sun. It used to. The sun would sit atop this massive tower and it would supply light and warmth to the world. This sun was also presumably a light bulb, and that specific one died and lost its light. With no light reaching the plants of this world, most of them died off. But thankfully, this world has an abundance of a material called phosphor. Phosphor comes in many different types depending on the color. Blue in the barrens, green in the glen, and red in refuge. Phosphor is a crucial part of the game's lore. It's the reason why people here have been able to survive so long without the sun. Phosphor more than likely comes from the word phosphorus. Phosphorus is the 15th element on the periodic table. It usually exists as a solid in nature. Highly combustible, the name comes from the Greek word phos, which means light, and phoros, which means bringer. We can assume that phos is still light, but phor is just bear, or to bear something. Living up to its name, phosphor holds light energy and stores it in many different forms depending on the type. Blue phosphor is typically found in the sands of the barrens and the shrimp, which also live in the barrens. The shrimp mainly live in the ocean that surrounds the barrens and can make their way onto land to consume the toxic gas that spews out from these geysers. With my limited knowledge, if I had to take a wild guess of what the inspiration behind these shrimp was, I would have guessed that these creatures are made to mimic the very same which live near these geothermal vents. The heat generated by these vents would normally kill anything that gets too close, yet there are animals in these areas that thrive. In the absence of sunlight, living things use alternative methods to live. Instead of using the heat and energy from the sun to photosynthesize their food, they use chemicals and the heat from these vents. This process is called chemosynthesis. The shrimp of Oneshot don't follow this process, but I think the visual inspiration is there. Green phosphor is found in the glen, most notably in these strange trees, the moss found in the water, and these fireflies which pepper the air. This type of phosphor is found exclusively inside living things. The trees in the glen excrete this sap that contains green phosphor. It would appear that at one point these trees were cut down and harvested for their sap. These trees don't have leaves, which makes sense considering that leaves contain chlorophyll, which is usually something that's used in photosynthesis. During the fall and winter months, some trees actually lose most if not all of their leaves. When the sun left, the leaves on these trees died, and those that remained survived in this passive state, getting energy from the phosphor in their bark. Red phosphor is found in the refuge. Red phosphor glows at the lowest intensity compared to the others, so to make it a viable light source, it is combined in these highly concentrated cells. Unfortunately, these highly concentrated cells expire much faster than normal, so they have to be switched out regularly. Finally, we have yellow phosphor, the strongest phosphor that can glow for a very long time. The feather, the coin, the dice, and of course, the light bulb which Nico is currently holding. Hey, you want to know something about phosphor? It's freaking real. Yeah, it actually exists. I was trying to look up yellow phosphor, like on the Oneshot wiki page, and I ended up finding the Wikipedia page for IRL phosphor. So, I guess here's a section on CRT displays. This is relevant, by the way, just bear with me. Phosphor is a substance that generates light after you channel electrons through it. This is called cathode luminescence. CRTs, or cathode ray tube displays, have screens filled with luminescent material, and inside is an electron gun which shoots electrons at the screen. This then makes the red, green, or blue phosphor emit light. Why am I going on a tangent explaining the inner workings of a CRT display in a one-shot analysis? It's thematically relevant, that's why. Think of the world of Oneshot in a grand scale as we the player can see it. The blue barrens, the green glen, and the red refuge. Each of these areas can be seen as a massive blip of phosphor. All it needs is a bit of power, and you probably know what that means. Every time you boot up the world machine, you are supplying the world of Oneshot with electricity, and therefore allowing the world to form. Your computer acts as the electron gun, and the phosphor in this world acts as the phosphor that you would see in a CRT. Every time you turn on the game, you are supplying this world with power, literally allowing the world to form. If you ever close the game when Nico is not at a bed, you will turn the game back on to find Nico in a state of panic. Nico will tell you that the entire world went dark. This is why you are the god of this world. You create it, and then you turn it off whenever you stop playing. Yep, that's right. Your actions here will affect Nico and the world itself. Remember that. Back to the prophecy. The prophecy explains that when a person from another world arrives with the sun, they will be henceforth known as the Messiah, and they are the only one who has the power to communicate with the God of this world. That's you! When the conversation points towards the computer, which we spoke to earlier, Prophetbot seems confused. He assumes that they were trying to direct a message to us, the supposed God of this world. Prophet is overjoyed to finally be able to enact his programming and help the Messiah on their quest. Nico isn't interested in this title, and as a final question, they ask how they can return home. Nico explains that they were just with their mother only hours ago, so naturally they just want to go home. Here we have Prophetbot, a robot whose sole purpose is to give someone much needed information to do a specific job, only to find out that that person has no desire to complete this job. I can only imagine, but this revelation seems to be devastating to Prophet in a way. This last question ends the dialogue with Prophetbot, but talking to him again will let you ask him about other things, like the barrens, which he knows very little about. You see, Prophetbot was not built to wander, so he has stood in this very spot for as long as he can remember. It is here he mentions the concept of being tamed. Tamed refers to a robot and their ability to think freely. Prophet is not tamed, so we will save the taming analysis for a robot who is, like Silver. Prophetbot lives a very sad life. He is a tool used to carry out a job which he has done to the letter. The circumstances of Prophetbot's existence, of all of the robot's existences, is cold, unyielding. The worst of it all is now that his programming is fulfilled and the Messiah and God are informed, he has no more purpose. What happens when you use a hammer so much that the blunt end breaks off? What happens when you use an obsidian scalpel for a few minutes and the tip breaks? What happens when any tool in your possession breaks? You either fix it, or get rid of it and get a new one. The obvious difference here is that Prophetbot is now aware of his obsolescence, and he cannot be repaired because he fulfilled his job perfectly. There is nothing broken to be fixed. It's a fate worse than death. Now that Prophetbot is out of the way, we can continue to explore the barrens. Believe it or not, there is a lot to see. For starters, entering the building next to Prophetbot will bring you into the outpost itself. Inside, there is a massive electromagnetic field generator, which used to power all of the robots in this area. Missing its power cell, none of the robots nearby can help Nico reach the glen. So now we have our mission. On one of the walls, we see laid out the 3 laws that govern the behavior of all of the robots in this world. Number 1, robots are not allowed to hurt people. Number 2, a robot must obey orders without breaking the first law. And 3, the robot must defend itself from harm as long as this defense does not conflict with the first or second laws. These are the 3 laws of robotics in the 1950s collection of short stories, I, Robot, written by Isaac Asimov. 9 short stories putting robots and people into situations where the laws are challenged. These 3 laws will carry story significance in the future. Moving further east will bring us to a factory which is currently inactive. At least it seems that way. You see, there is still this one machine that is still active. There is nothing under it to be smashed, but it continues to smash regardless, and I can't help but draw comparisons to Prophetbot. Just like this machine continues to smash literally nothing, Prophetbot will continue to wait in place for the Messiah to return. The correct thing to smash in the smasher is this metal bar. When smashed, it will form a curved edge and become a crowbar. You can now use the crowbar to open up the lockbox in the outpost. Inside is a broken power cell. Now we need to find a way to fix it. Before leaving, I took note of all of these lifeless robots just sitting here on the assembly line. What's left of a robot? What's left of an old computer terminal? What's left, as in what remains? What is here after what was? Decay is a running theme of the barrens, where once a place where clever people would take rock and metal and make it move, has now been claimed by time. All of their efforts and all of their accomplishments, they could not beat time, and soon this metal will return to the earth as well. Decay is something that is mentioned several times during our stay here in the barrens, both by characters' recollection and, well, just look around. This whole place is decaying. As we will soon learn, the decaying was something that happened long before the sun disappeared. This tragedy was the last straw for some people. While exploring the cliffs area further east, you find a note. The writer of this note apologizes. They didn't want to watch as the world they lived in slowly died in a cold darkness. You find this note next to a cliff's edge. Nico's blank expression would tell us that they do not know what this note means, and I would keep it that way. This small and easily missed event symbolizes the circumstances of this game completely. A lone child surrounded by the despair of a dying world, too innocent to understand just how bad things are. From here you cannot progress. The upper area of the barrens is covered in a toxic gas. Attempting to go there will cause Nico to turn back. So instead we turn right and find ourselves at Lookout Point. Hello, Silver. This is Silver, one of my favorite characters. Much like Prophet, she is a robot. The main difference being that Silver has a more human visage, and she is tamed. Like Prophetbot, she immediately recognizes the sun and the implications that come with it. A child being tasked with returning the sun. This is something that Silver just can't get behind, let alone the prophecy itself. In her protest, she gives Nico a piece of advice. They should just put this behind them, focus on getting home, and forget about the prophecy. Leave and let the world die naturally. From the beginning, Silver displays her non-conformity, her ability to think for herself. She pontificates her stance of the world and the state of such. According to Silver, returning the sun will do nothing. The world is too far past its expiration date, and it would be best just to allow the decay to win. With the addition of Silver, we now have two robotic characters possessing incredibly different viewpoints on the prophecy and how effective the return of the sun will be. The only difference being that Silver can think for herself. Taming is a concept that will not be fully explained until the very end, but we will discuss it in full now. Think of every robot as a wild animal. When an animal is born, they have a certain set of skills and knowledge that allow them to better survive. For example, a chicken will peck at the ground, not because they know there is food beneath them, but that's what their instincts tell them to do. Animals have several preset behaviors that they know, and some that they pick up along the way. This can be seen as an animal's programming, the rules they follow which dictates what type of animal they are. They are feral, undomesticated, untamed. They don't know anything other than what they are meant to do. Even humans follow these rules. The determining factor of whether or not a robot or AI can be considered tamed falls to whether or not a robot can defy their programming, like Silver. So why does Silver hold this view of the world? The root of the problem lies within her creator, Kip. Kip is the head engineer of Refuge. Silver was made in Kip's own image as a means to make the first tamed robot. Silver was not an initial success. Judging how the world of Oneshot also follows the 3 laws of robotics, giving a robot the ability to break them would lead to contradictions in their code, leading to distress, which they did. The specifics of what Silver did are left ambiguous, so we can only assume that she hurt someone or herself when she, quote-unquote, went rogue. We learned that the author was able to help her calm down after this event, but things didn't get any better as they sent Silver away to work in the barrens. Kip often sent letters to Silver. We even see one telling her to leave the barrens with the other functional robots. We know that Silver never responded to these letters, and she never returned home. I think it's pretty obvious that Silver is hurt over what happened, and I don't blame her one bit. I always thought it was a little narcissistic of Kip to model Silver after herself. It invites Kip's self-image to get in the way of her task, and I believe this was one of the main causes of what happened. Silver never had a chance to make her own personality. She was given one, and on top of that, she was given the ability to deny her orders, a level of freedom that none of the other robots had. She had the ability to make her own decisions, and yet she had programming to follow. Kip's programming. When she failed, she was sent away. This only compounded the problem. She wasn't a complete success at first, but she still had feelings. Yes, she was a potential threat to herself and those around her, but that also meant that she could feel abandonment and shame. And now it was her job to look after several robots that couldn't share in her freedom. She felt like a tool to Kip. She didn't feel like her tame nature was being taken seriously. When the sun disappeared, this worldview was only reinforced. Not all of the robots were evacuated. Only the ones that were deemed important were saved. Sure, Kip saw Silver as important and told her to evacuate, but Kip didn't understand. Silver took care of these robots. She kept them in working order. She cared about them. She wouldn't want to leave these robots because she knows what abandonment feels like. She decided to stay for this reason, and in her solitude, she only felt resentment for the human that gave her feelings and then sent her away. Before leaving, Silver lets you take her screwdriver, which you can use to pop out the lens and the camera you find in the old mine shaft. Replacing the lens in the power cell and holding it up to the sun for a few seconds will allow it to charge. You can now place the power cell into the main generator, and now the entire facility has power again. Most, if not all, of the robots come back online and begin to go about their duties just as before. Power is also returned to the computer inside the outpost. The entity from before begins to speak to you once again. They are aware of the safe that is locked with a code, and they tell you that the information we need no longer exists in this world. The game world, to be more precise. Your destination is the Documents folder on your computer, or, in this case, the World Machine's desktop. The document in question is partially written in a language we do not understand. This is actually a real document in the game files itself, so you can just make out the entire message. Dear, this is my first attempt to send a message to you, and I'm afraid I must make it brief. I have left you a journal, part of which is written in a language that you won't be able to understand at first. However, there will come a time when you will obtain a translation to progress. Read it, and you will know what to do. I have also left you a mask because I know your Messiah will need it. Look for a metal safe in the quarry to the east, somewhere between the ocean and the lookout point. The answer we need is at the bottom, but the text of this note gives us more questions than answers. This note mentions some type of translation, as in some parts of the note will be unreadable to us for a time, but we will be able to translate it later. As we know, this does not happen. As of right now, we do not know who is using this computer to talk to us, or why they are helping us. Judging by the tone of the music, they are not our friend. In the World Machine edition of Oneshot, we find these glitches in the world. Nico cannot touch them, but you can. Moving your mouse over to them inside the game window will unlock a character entry, and sometimes it will unlock custom art to put in your background. The game is now wearing its artificiality like a badge of honor. With the addition of these character entries, it becomes apparent that these are just characters in a story that Nico is interacting with. To solve the puzzle of getting the power cell fixed, we look around the game world and use our heads to put together the pieces and bring the facility back online. However, as detailed by the computer themselves, our progress ends here and the answer lies outside of this narrative. The game is directly drawing attention to itself. It is a narrative, and the narrative cannot continue unless it helps us. While most games would do everything to avoid a player being sent back to the desktop, Oneshot has decided to do the opposite. Returning to the desktop would be a blatant break in immersion, and that sense of shock is exactly why this game works so well. Think about a time you were playing a game, complete flow state and everything, and suddenly the game just glitches or crashes altogether. Pretty upsetting, right? Oneshot takes this concept and induces it to get a similar effect for different reasons. Think of it as a metaphorical pulling on a rope. When you are playing the game, moving Nico around, letting them solve puzzles, you are pulling the rope in your direction, controlling the narrative. However, when this entity pulls you out and places you back to the desktop, it is pulled in the other direction to try to take control. This chain of events immediately invokes a feeling of caution or even resentment. During my first playthrough, I was so certain that the computer was the villain for this reason. The relationship of the computer to the player is eerily similar to that of Nico and the player. We tell Nico where to go, what to pick up, and what to combine. Nico doesn't think to challenge our request unless it is absolutely necessary. Just because we can tell them what to do doesn't mean they will listen. The clash for control of this narrative will be brought up again, where we will develop this more. Nico is tired from walking, and they need a break. In a nearby building, we find a bed, and if you let Nico take a rest, the game closes. This event keys us into a very important part of this game's narrative. Nico themselves is our anchor, our connection to this world, our vehicle to explore this game's narrative. When you reopen the game window, we see one of Nico's many dreams. Nico finds themselves in a field of wheat. They look around for a few moments, and the dream ends. Wheat is one of the oldest known crops, and as a result, wheat in its raw form is the quintessential representation of a rustic lifestyle. Nico's world gives off a homely, traditional vibe, the closest you can get to a natural lifestyle. From the brief and limited glances we are allowed into Nico's world, it seems like Nico's world is just as innocent as they are. When they wake up, we get a chance to talk. This conversation of home is one of the many conversations which endears us to Nico. Home is a concept that pretty much everyone is familiar with. You either remember the place you come from, or still live there and can't think of living anywhere else. The nostalgic feeling of home allows us to connect with Nico, but it also makes us understand what we are working towards. We want to send Nico back here, because this will make them happy. Taking the code from the document on your computer and using it on the safe will open it, and a gas mask can be found inside. Nico is initially confused by this event, having never seen a code before. This confusion is replaced by fear, as a blemish of black and purple squares appear on the other end of the chasm. These squares look similar to the terrain, but their behavior is alien compared to everything you have seen so far. The mystery of these pixels will have to wait. Now that you have the gas mask, you can explore the northern area of the barrens without any harm coming to Nico. In this northern area, we learn even more about the people who lived here. We learn that there were once other tamed robots, and they were evacuated with priority over the other robots. During the initial evacuation, something went wrong. The larger ships began to malfunction because of something described as squares, more than likely the very same which we saw in the chasm by the safe. Inside one of the buildings, we find a document which mentions that the blue phosphor can be combined with the gas found in this area to create a super effective rust cleaner. Using the syringe found in a first aid kit and the bottle we found at the beginning of the game, we can mix the gas and the blue phosphor to make this compound. Finally completing one rotation around the barrens, we find Robot, the last robot who can take us to the Glen. His rust is cleaned up no problem. But there is another problem. He cannot take us to the Glen because his navigation sensors are damaged. Time has not been kind to Robot, and we are going to need Silver's help one last time. Silver is quick to ascertain a solution. The robot cannot use its pre-programmed navigation data, so it needs a sample of something from the Glen so it can follow the trail back, akin to a bloodhound. Silver has in her possession a black clover necklace encased in yellow phosphor. Black clovers are a type of plant that grow all over the Glen. Silver is reluctant to part with the necklace, however. This necklace is more than likely a keepsake given to her by Kip. Despite her proposed resentment and hurt feelings, I believe this event is to imply that Silver still cares about Kip, and that necklace reminds her of a time where things were more simple. Silver is feeling nostalgia, a very complex emotion that requires reflection of past memories and the ability to think independently on the outcomes of those memories. Nico needs this necklace more than she does, so she parts with it. Before leaving, Nico seeks to return the favor. Silver would ask for nothing but a simple game of chess. Being a computer capable of several move computations, Silver defeats Nico with ease. Silver mentions how playing chess was an integral part of her programming. You could go with the simple interpretation of Silver just being lonely and wanted to spend a little more time with Nico. She has lived in reclusion in the barrens for a long time, so she may just want someone to play with. I, on the other hand, think something else is happening. Silver is a tamed robot. She isn't bound to what she was made for, so, in theory, as long as she has power, she can do whatever she wants. However, this explosion of consciousness, this realization that she is awake, was too much for her initially. This led to the incident that led to her being secluded in this area. In a way, her tame nature is the reason why she lives in the barrens. So, maybe she doesn't want to be tamed. I could see that this may be a strange idea, but I would remind you of Silver's ability to feel nostalgia. She asks Nico to play chess, something that she was initially programmed to do. Even if it's brief, only for a few minutes, I think that Silver just wanted to pretend that she was back to being an untamed robot. She didn't have to think about the decay of the world, she wouldn't have to feel abandoned by Kip. She could just be a robot that was designed to play chess. Nico loses, but Silver thanks them for the game regardless. Nico says goodbye, and with that, they are off to the Glen. Robot and Nico finally arrive in the Glen. Where there was once an endless desert of drac blue sand, the Glen is filled with green grass and glimmering fireflies. Nico thanks Robot for helping them, but is curious as to why Robot has to leave. The only reason Robot gives is that this is their purpose. They are not tamed, so their programming is all they know. Even though it will surely mean a certain demise, Robot makes the decision to go back to the barrens. Nico does not think to question this. This would be yet another example of a robot just following its programming because this is all they can do. Nico walks out onto the overlook and we see a landscape of alien-like trees. We find ourselves in the middle of a forest that has been sapped of its trees. It seems as though the people from the nearby village have taken to chop down more trees than they have been able to replace. Either that or the new trees refuse to grow over the lack of sunlight. The people in this village use the many fireflies that dance around in this place as their main source of light. This is a wonderful example of visual storytelling. Even though this place could be considered an oasis compared to the barrens, the decay is still present here. Regardless of this, the people here continue about their normal lives. They barter for goods, they fish for food, and they look after their loved ones. We bump into Calamus, a young boy looking for his younger sister, Alula. Alula has been cast astray, and Calamus is the only one who looks after her. Calamus asks Nico for help, only to then realize that they are this grand messiah of which the prophecy has foretold. Nico takes no offense, seeing themselves as no more important than Calamus. They don't see themselves as this godlike figure. They are the messiah by title alone. You could argue that at this point, after their talk with Silver, their faith in the prophecy has been shaken. When Calamus asks Nico if they are the savior, they pause for a moment before answering, almost like they are unsure of what the title even means. A feeling of dread, which will boil over later. But for now, we have to find the lost Alula. Moving to the east, we will find the Guardian of the Glen. The Barrens also had a Guardian robot, but they weren't as plot relevant. My best assessment on what the purpose of these guys would be is that they were in charge of keeping the peace, both before and after the sun disappeared. The Guardian in the Barrens appears to have suffered from more damage compared to the other one, which could point towards a sort of panic or uproars of violence from people after the sun disappeared. I should mention that while I would not classify this video as a review of sorts, it is almost impossible to fully analyze a game and its events without criticizing it at some point. That being said, the plot point of Nico not being able to move on to the refuge because the Guardian demands that they write their name in pen while not having a pen has got to be the absolute weakest point in this game's plot. This Guardian guards the place where you can enter the refuge, but they first want you to write your name on a scroll of names for some reason, and of course, they don't have a pen. So the Guardian cannot go against its programming. Sure, I got that. But there are several things that Nico could use to write their name. Why do they specifically need a pen and ink? Throughout the game's 3 iterations, I really wish this plot point wasn't here, and there was actually a valid reason for why Nico couldn't progress. Anyway, moving further east brings us to an old ruin. While there are active robots in this area, they seem to be at the mercy of the land here, as entire sections of ruins are blocked off by these vines. Eventually, we find ourselves in a room with a single computer in it, and with that, the chain is yanked once again. The computer has now decided to change the desktop itself to a strange symbol. They explain that we will know what to do with this message when the time comes. Even though we are given the label of God, the computer here appears to have more control over what is happening than we do. This added knowledge puts the computer always at an advantage over the player. The computer is aware of future events, and instead of waiting for us to come to them with questions about secret codes or how many shots we have, they seek to jump ahead and tell us something that will help us out later. Every video game requires an electronic device to run. For the most part, the technology in question has always been just that, a tool or a piece of tech that acts as your gateway into the narratives within video games. Oneshot has done away with this divide and uses your computer itself to tell the story. Adding to the mystique of this computer's powers, it gives you a cryptic warning. It gives off the impression that it knows what challenge awaits you further along the narrative, and it has given you the tools needed to pass. It chooses not to tell you because the computer doesn't care if you are informed. It doesn't value your feelings or your privacy, and that is exactly why this moment works. The immersion into this narrative works so well because it makes a point to tell you that yes, there is a video game happening in the confines of this window, as you are familiar with. However, there is a potentially threatening narrative taking place on your very computer, that you are also vulnerable to. Moving further into the ruins, we find ourselves down in this underground tunnel. At the end of this tunnel, we meet Maize. Maize is enclosed under a bundle of thick vines, identical to the ones we saw on the surface. Maize immediately recognizes the sun and identifies Nico as the savior. She is bewildered. This entire time under the impression that the savior was just a story that people would tell each other to keep their spirits up. Maize was never expecting anyone to show up and save her. Maize is weak. I doubt she could even move from her spot if she tried to. Her time is running out. The sun cannot save her. She has accepted her fate, but asks for one thing. Maize is a plant spirit, a powerful plant spirit that once acted as a silent guardian for the people of the glen for a very long time. It was her vines which have slowed the collapse of the glen. You find out along the way that the glen has been slowly crumbling away. Entire bits of pieces of land have begun to fall into the ocean, making living space harder and harder to come by. Maize has done all she can, but now her time is up. The sun can't save her, but all she wants is to feel its glow one final time. Initially, she thinks the notion of this would be selfish. Imagine that. A spirit that has literally given her life so that these villagers can enjoy their lives for a little while longer, thinks it is selfish to ask for something to comfort her while she dies. We have seen examples of this in the past, but I feel like Maize represents this at the highest level. The theme I am referencing is that of striving for absolute survival at all costs, whether it's your own survival or the survival of others. There is a sort of ignorant hope that these people have, and this shard of hope has allowed them to survive this long. She persisted. With her strength, she tried her best to survive because this is what she wants. This is what she was made to do. Looking deeper into this theme in the glen, we find an interesting parallel to the robots in the barrens. The people who live here and Maize are not robots. They have free will and they think for themselves. Yet they cling to life knowing full well that the world may one day crumble away. Why do they do this? Simple. Every single living thing, simple or complex, has an inherent instinct to survive. This instinct is our programming, and we follow it to the letter. We live, we breathe, because we have been doing it since the day we were born, and we have been doing it for thousands of years. This is what Maize has to do, not because she's a robot and she doesn't have a choice. This is what she is, and this is the purpose she has chosen to carry out. Puts the concept of tamed robots into perspective, doesn't it? I left the sun with Maize for a while. It's the least I could do. The vines that were once blocking our path are now gone. Maize isn't afraid anymore. Now we can enter this area which was initially blocked off. In this room lies a grid of diamonds. The grid is 5x6, very similar to the image that is now on your desktop. Solving the puzzle and returning the light bulb to the floor image thing will make the blocks disappear. Enter Alula. Alula and Calamus are siblings. Before, they would live in the glen with their father Rachis. Both of their names come from the developer's background in biology. Calamus is a term used in zoology, used to describe a base of a feather. Alula comes from a term referring to the feathers on the first segment of a bird's wing. These seemingly random characters actually give us a lot of story information regarding the world, especially Alula. Alula has this fox plushie, a present that was given to her by the author themselves. The siblings and their father used to live in the village, until one day they were moved to the ruins. They were never sure what the reason for this change was, but if I had to guess, I think it has something to do with the author. The author is a character wrapped in mystery. Much like the prophet of the village, we never meet them directly, and instead are left with stories from the people who did know them. The village is a seemingly safe place, unless you were made aware of the fact that the glen was slowly sinking into the ocean. The village to the north rests directly on the edge of the water, and therefore would be a place that would be the first to go. I believe that Rachis was told by the author that the cascade would happen, and as a preventative measure, he moved his family deep into the ruins, putting them as close to Maize as possible. The two bird people are alone. Their father is no longer with them, so more specifically Calamus, ventures out and forages for any food he can find. He takes care of Alula as best he can, and that's pretty much it. Alula likes to run around and explore the ruins, sometimes to her detriment. Calamus knows how to read, and by the looks of things, he is one of the only residents of the Glen who does. They speak of this prophet, the same prophet who came up with the prophecy which Nico is carrying out. If you actually travel to the prophet's hut, however, they are nowhere to be found. This could be one of the reasons why Prophetbot was made, a robot built to pass on information to the Messiah should they ever arrive. Keeping with the theme of maize, these two children are aware of the dire circumstances of their lives, and yet they remain cheerful. They take care of each other, and they keep pushing forward. When you return to maize, something has happened. Maize is nowhere to be found, and the light bulb is void of its light. The light bulb springs back to life, and in the darkness, Nico notices a small kernel on the ground. This is Maize's child that she left for us. This is why life exists. This is why the people of this world try so hard to live, so that those who come after, their children, can have a world to live in. We are allotted a short amount of time to live. It's never really enough, but it's our job to push on so that our children can experience it as well. Rachis understood this, and Maize understood this. Now you have a seed, a genesis of new life. What will you do with it? Welcome to the refuge, the last city of this world. As soon as we enter the refuge, we see the guardian of this area, much more well kept than any of the others. They point us in the direction of the laboratory, which is located on the surface. Off to the left is a secluded area only accessible if we have the sacred kernel, naturally referring to the kernel that Maize left for us. At the end of this path is a flower pot. We place the kernel inside, but it needs soil and water. We'll have to come back to this later. Refuge is divided into two main areas, the upper catwalk area and the surface, where the base of the tower is. In the original version, only the catwalk areas actually existed. To get to the surface, Nico makes their way down to the elevator, but unfortunately, it's under repair right now. Enter the lamplighter, a moth's best friend. The lamplighter is a worker in Refuge, responsible for changing all of the red lamps filled with phosphor. A group of robots used to do this, but due to ever-growing malfunctions, the lamplighter is left to do most of this by himself. The lamplighter is a hard worker. He tends to the lamps, making sure that all of the people in Refuge have a steady supply of light. This takes up almost 100% of his time. So much time, he rarely sleeps. You would think that because he works so hard, the people of Refuge would thank him and treat him like a celebrity. Well, considering I just set up a joke, no they don't. They don't care, or they just don't know he exists. Inside this dark alleyway, we find the lamplighter's home. A dusty, dark, secluded area is all that the lamplighter has to call home, and he works so hard that he doesn't even use it to rest. As far as we know, the lamplighter is the only one doing this. Everyone else is just sitting in their rooms enjoying themselves. Nothing worth doing is easy. Suffer greatly here so that others don't suffer over there. The lamplighter keeps the stress with him so it doesn't reach anyone else. In a world filled with unending darkness, to be the one who fixes it makes him feel like his life has purpose. Is this the most efficient way of doing things? No. Would it be better if he simply asked people to help him? Yes. But in his mind, this is his job, his purpose. Whatever excuse he makes for himself, it's a burden he has to bear. Maybe this is what keeps him occupied, so he doesn't have to think about a dying world. Maybe he was told the robot repairs would only be a little while. The true reason, I don't know, but he does this job and it benefits the masses. He is helping people with his work, and that seems to be enough for him. Moving to the left will take you to this apartment building area. Inside one of the rooms, this specific NPC has always intrigued me. Inside this apartment is a person dressed in all black. They don't move, they don't even look at Nico when they walk in, they just stand there, without a word spoken. On the wall facing you, you can see several photos. These are supposedly all family photos. At the top left of the room there are two beds. With there being a bed next to this person, I don't think these beds are for them. I think it is very clear that at some point many people used to live in this apartment. But now, only this single NPC does. This NPC and their loneliness can mean a lot of things. Maybe their family is gone, and they are so distraught that all they can do is stay in their room. Maybe their parents are one of the many scientists on the surface, too busy to be home. All they have to comfort them is this little penguin.
Hello.
This strange little penguin is actually a reference to a small indie game called Hello Penguin. This room was interesting, but it is nothing compared to what awaits us at the end of the hall. Adorn yourself atop the Roomba, Nico. We ride! This entire section used to be silent, by the way. The track that plays now is called Time to Fight Crime, which used to be an unused track, so I'm glad they found a use for it. After all that fun, Nico finds some scissors, some magnets, an old coffee can, and after some crafting, Nico fashions a button replacement for the elevator, which falls apart moments later. Well, Nico, you tried. Time to break the sun. No, not really. On the far right area, there is a tape dispenser in the refuge's upper power station. Using the tape, you now have a working button, but unfortunately, it still needs a code to work. To find this code, we need the computer's help once again. The computer gives us access to this special window which pops up. To find the code hidden within, we need to drag the window into the void, and then drag it back out. After a lengthy and awkward elevator ride, we find ourselves at the surface. Finally, we make our way into the library. Wow, what a fantastic library. Let me ask around to see if I can find anyone to help me get into the tower. Okay, you know what? Screw you. Nico, destroy the sun. These people don't deserve to live. Within the library, we meet this robot in charge of bookkeeping and such. They have a direct line to George, the head librarian, but of course she doesn't pick up. So now we have to go and talk to her directly. All we need to get into the head librarian's office is a library card. And to get a library card, all we need to do is ask the head librarian, George, who isn't answering. A robot's programming will not allow us to do something unless we get permission, but we can't get permission because we don't have the permission to do something. Darn you, laws of robotics. Anyway, we need a library card, and to do that, we need to talk to Kip, the head engineer of the refuge. Before we can enter the lab though, we have to solve this puzzle. There is no hint or explanation as to why this puzzle exists. However, I have my theories, which we will talk about in just a bit. Once you play around with it a bit, you realize it is a simple logic puzzle. As far as I know, the solution is different every single time, so you just have to figure it out before it resets. Start off by changing every single color once, then use process of elimination to find out which ones are right and which ones are wrong. If it says 3 are correct, but then 2 are correct after you change one, that one was previously correct. Inside the lab, we meet Kip, who is the spitting image of Silver, or rather the other way around. Like most characters before, Kip identifies Nico as the Messiah. However, contrary to other characters' reactions, she doesn't think to actually ask and confirm. This could be the result of one or two things. 1. Kip is simply very confident in her ability to identify the Messiah, or 2. Silver sent a message to them. If you talk to one of the scientists, they mentioned that the head engineer sent them a report of a cluster of blocks that was seen. This cluster could have very well been the cluster that appeared after Nico received the gas mask from the safe. Silver could have also very well mentioned that the Messiah has arrived, so it could very well mean that Nico was expected. Kip apologizes to Nico, stating that if she knew that Nico would have been there so soon, she would have turned off the puzzle. She doesn't have a chance to develop this. so we are left to assume. My best guess would be to stop any illogical malfunctioning robots or illogical rioting people from getting in. But really, it beats me. Showing Kip the necklace that Silver gave you will net you the other side of the story. Kip had a lot of enthusiasm in Silver. She wanted to make a robot unlike anything before. She even based the design off of herself, so she knew that it would work. And like I mentioned before, I think this is one of the main reasons it didn't work. Kip was so sure of herself, so blind of her own shortcomings, she didn't realize that individuality is the first step towards identity. Pay attention to how Kip emphasizes the word build, as in a personality cannot be built. Kip strikes me as a type of person who was high off of her previous success. She was young, very intelligent, and she had already made several advancements in robotics which helped to improve the lives of countless people. And that's just it. She made advancements in robotics. She knew everything there is to know about building something and giving it instructions on what to do. She spent so much time with robots, and I think she lost sight of what it was like to be human. To have a mind, to have a consciousness, you can't just download it onto a robot like a song or a list of instructions. Sure, you can mimic life, but if you are striving for something that is real, then you need to value the uniqueness of life on a fundamental level. I'm not saying that Kip is elitist or malicious in some way. I just think she got too comfortable being able to control things in her world, and she didn't realize that she was making something that she couldn't control, not fully. And when Silver failed, she turned her back on Silver. She said it herself, and as I mentioned earlier, Silver still feels resentment. Kip gives you her library card, which is currently useless unless we can find a way to alter it. So we have a library card and we need it to look like ours. Nothing a little identity theft couldn't fix. But before we get back to the library, let's talk about this alleyway here. It looks like any other alley until you get to this point. Static and a vision, perhaps. A vision of the future, or maybe it's the past. Following this vision, you will be in this room with a single tree in its center. This tree is a normal tree. It looks nothing like the trees in the glen. What is a tree doing in a dark alleyway like this? And where is that light coming from? Everything about this place is just bizarre. So much so that this talking fox behind the tree looks like it fits just fine. The fox behind the tree tells us that she can't speak with us now. Now's not the time. If you can find a way to return, then you will find her again. Nico wants an explanation, but unfortunately this message wasn't for them. Looking behind the tree, you will find nothing. For now, all you will find here are mysteries. Let's head back to the library. The altered library card is more than enough to fool the receptionist. Walking up the stairs, we will find one of the many instances of George. George is the head librarian and the main publisher of all of the author's writings, and you'll also notice that I said one of the instances of George. George comes in one of 6 versions which are tied to your playthrough. Your personalities include: Number 1, a version of George who speaks in the third person, nice and very confident. Number 2, a little rude, angry, and agitated, seemingly stressed. Number 3, being the complete opposite of the first, this specific George doesn't have any self-confidence at all, and she is a little too hard on herself. The 4th personality is also pretty nice, but a little bit bashful at the same time. Number 5 is warm and caring. She refers to Nico as sweetie or dear, almost motherly in a sense. Number 6 is suave George, brandishing her finger guns haphazardly. The universe we live in had a beginning. We are currently in the middle, and one day, as far off as that is, this universe will come to an end. When this universe came into being, the laws of physics were decided, for lack of a better word. These laws dictate everything from the formation of stars to why bread always falls butter side down. Knowing this, we can assume that if the world of Oneshot has its own set of rules, if those rules were ever so slightly changed, we would get different events and different outcomes. George doesn't necessarily change depending on what universe you're in. All of these versions of George technically exist. This is the only version that we are seeing right now. So, what makes George so special? Well, I think the deciding factor here would be her relationship with the author. Knowing what we know already about the world of Oneshot and how this universe is simply a film of information that arranges itself into a living universe when we turn on our computer, I would not be surprised if all of these different versions were not the direct result of George publishing the author's findings. At this point, I am almost certain that it was the author who left us this message in the barrens. So the author knew that one day the Messiah would show up. The author knew he would not be here to meet the Messiah, and with that, we have our answer. There is this concept known as death of the author. The term comes from an essay written in 1967 by Roland Barthes. This essay makes the argument that the overall meaning of a piece of media is not exclusively tied to the intentions of the author of that piece. The events of Oneshot and the mystery surrounding the author's many works is a massive pun that stems from this concept. The author left behind all of these pieces of media, so now they are able to be interpreted in several different ways, the same way that George takes on several different personalities.
Hey. Wait. Hold on a minute, that would only be the case if the author invented George.
It's funny you say that, random stock image, because the author actually did create George. Well, in a way he did. This reveal comes far down the line, but essentially the world you have been seeing this whole time is actually a digital version of the real world these people used to inhabit. The world machine is the invention of the author, and even if George at one point had a life of her own, she was transformed into code for the sake of her survival. So, in essence, the author did create this version of George. And when this world machine was created, just like our universe, the rules and circumstances of it were realized, hence the different versions of George we see. We give George the book that we found in the safe in the barrens, which George then translates. Inside the book are direct instructions of how to enter the tower. To enter the tower, we have to combine 3 pieces of the old sun and close the window. George is naturally perplexed by what this means, but I think I know what the game is asking us. We have finally made our way to the tower. Inside, there are no stairs, no lights, only this big bright X. An X we have seen before. The instructions are to close the window, which we do, and like a light switch, we return and Nico finds themselves in a brand new place. This place is dark, almost empty. When Nico walks around, we see little ripples on the floor, to signify that there is water on the ground. Nico is obviously confused, so they call out our name for guidance. Before, a text box would appear, allowing us to talk to Nico, give them some reassurance. But now, we can't say anything. This separation is very effective. Nico was our support throughout this entire adventure. And in a way, we have given Nico a fair amount of support. Nico was our attachment, our anchor to this narrative. Through Nico, we could interact with this world and explore, develop the narrative. However, that connection to Nico and the narrative itself has been cut. After walking for a time, Nico finds the computer. The entity is now talking directly to Nico. They lie. They say that we have already left and we are not coming back. They have taken the sun and separated us from Nico. Nico is not oblivious to these suspicious circumstances, and they are noticeably skeptical of the computer's words. But considering the situation, Nico has no choice but to believe them. As far as they know, the job is done, the world is saved, everything should be happy. And yet, Nico doesn't feel that way. They still wish they had a chance to say goodbye to us. The entity ignores this and simply tells Nico to go back to sleep, which they do. And right before the game closes, this entity gives us one last message. They tell us to leave and never come back. Our job is done, Nico is going home, and we are no longer welcomed here. Before, I mentioned a tug-of-war between this entity and us concerning control of the narrative. This would be the entity's final gambit, an attempt to take control of the narrative completely. And in a way, they have. They won. And they would have won if it wasn't for our friend, the author. Before, I spoke of narratives and how most typically comprise of a beginning, middle, and end. Some people believe that the ending is the most important part, and I agree. The ending is where conflict can be resolved, work can be achieved, and you can get the satisfaction of successfully carrying out the narrative. At this point, you could say this is the end of the narrative. The world machine has caught you in its trap, taken the sun, and sent Nico home, or at least put them to sleep so they can dream about their home. Most narratives end with a logical ending which coincides with events that happened before. However, the world machine has taken matters into its own hands and attempted to end the narrative as it stands. This gives us a level of perspective when it comes to the world machine and what they want. They are okay with this world dying, and they want Nico to be safe. But there is a solid difference in how we go about this task. The player and Nico have witnessed everything that this world has gone through. All of the strife, sadness, and accomplishments of all of these characters, living in a world devoid of light. I am very invested in the future of this world. I want to put the sun back, and I want to help these people. Nico seemingly does as well. But the world machine does not. The world machine knows what will happen at the end of the journey. The narrative of the world is inside its very programming, and yet they refuse. They don't want the sun to be returned because it is the sun itself which has bound Nico to this world. In understanding the course of events, the world machine has taken it upon itself to change the script. And in doing so, they have taken control of the narrative. You could argue that this entire section would be the world machine's attempt at writing an alternate ending to the game. The world machine values Nico and wants to see them happy, so, at the cost of themselves, they seek to drive us away and send Nico home. This action falls in line with the safe code in the barrens. The world machine has done everything they can to make sure that Nico is safe, even at the cost of everyone in this world. Why? The answer lies in a greater discussion which revolves around escapism and the relationship between us and the characters in the stories we love. When we follow a story, we always run the risk of getting invested. We identify with one or more characters. We form these parasocial connections with the fictitious lives these characters live. Parasocial, as in the imagined connection that materializes from our subjective understanding of a person we have never met. This happens with celebrities, public figures, and of course, fictitious characters. The conversation naturally turns towards our interaction with Nico, or even the world machine. Is the relationship truly parasocial when we directly interact with them? The interactions are sparse, typically answering yes or no questions, but the interactions are there. It's this intriguing level of interaction between the player and characters that is Oneshot's main selling point. But why does this happen? We find comfort in the familiar, so when we see someone that has gone through a similar experience, fictitious or not, we feel comforted. It's my mental illness and I can choose whatever comfort character I want. This is where escapism comes in. Reality can suck sometimes, and I think that's where narratives get their power. No matter how bad things get in your life, they probably wouldn't get as bad as living without sunlight. Seeing the characters here, listening to their stories, their narratives. In connecting to these people and helping them, we get a break from the stress of our own lives. The world machine has formed a bond with Nico, just as parasocial as the one a typical person would when it comes to stories. Notice how the world machine doesn't even notice Nico's sadness. They pay no mind to how Nico misses the player, or how they feel like the world hasn't truly been saved. They just want Nico to be safe, and they are, technically, but they never think to explain why they are doing this. After everything we've been through, I think I can sum it up pretty well. The world machine had its programming. Let Nico return the sun and sacrifice themselves to save the world machine and the people within. After realizing that this would rob Nico of their life, the world machine sought to stop the prophecy from happening, and here we are. They have formed this connection to Nico, and in true parasocial fashion, they don't have a true grasp of what Nico would want. They don't even allow Nico to finish speaking. They simply tell Nico to go to sleep and turn off. The goal was to stop the player, and they did. However, the world machine did not anticipate the author leaving a message behind for us. Inside the one-shot folder is a symbol with a black clover. This black clover opens up an entirely new window, and it allows us to get Nico's attention. This narrative is not over yet. The world machine notices our return, and tries to stop us by putting Nico into a maze of different passages and doorways. To find the correct path, you must drag the clover from the second window onto the game window and match them. The World Machine Edition allows it to snap on, so it's actually easier to do this puzzle now. It wasn't super difficult to understand what to do before, but with the snapping feature, people might end up figuring out the answer to this on accident. With every new room you enter, the page changes and you get a new piece of the puzzle. The author has left this world on his own terms, which heavily implies that the author is dead and gone, but they still have to communicate in secret because the NPCs in this world are still susceptible to the world machine. The author explains that the world machine itself wants to die. It doesn't care for the world it lives in. They believe that because everything here is a computer program, it doesn't deserve to live the same way Nico would. This behavior is self-destructive, and we have seen firsthand what the effects are. The blocks. These pixels are corrupted segments in the world machine's code. The world machine is hurting itself. Before you get to the final room, the author tells you one final secret, which I kinda accidentally already spoiled. Sorry. The sun itself is Nico's tie to the world. If Nico is our tie to this narrative, then the sun is Nico's tie to this narrative. If the sun shatters, the world will end instantly. Every single person, every single robot you met on your journey will disappear. We are arriving to the game's climax, the story that everything in this game has been leading to, whether you knew it or not. Up until now, you have been given the impression that all Nico needs to do is return the sun and they will go home. And now you are met with the fact that in accomplishing your goal, you will condemn Nico to this world forever. It's not fair. It's not right. It's a choice without a correct solution, and yet you need to make the choice. It's you. It has to be you. It's your responsibility. Nico believes in you every step of the way. No matter what you choose, Nico will go along with it. After Nico reacquires the sun, you find yourself back at that house, right back where you started. Except, things are different now. The plant in the bathroom is alive. The TV isn't broken. The room is no longer as disheveled. We started in this house. The house was broken down and destroyed. But here we are, back in the same house, and it just so happens to be inside the tower. I believe this place is the tower. It's just the real tower. The place where Nico woke up appeared to be the place we needed to be, but something was changed about it. A barrier was added by the world machine which would take us to the barrens, rather than directly to the tower. The place which we saw before was more than likely a part of the world machine's plan, to stop the prophecy from coming to fruition. Either way, you have a choice to make. Will you return the sun, thus saving the people of this world, but trapping Nico here forever? Or will you shatter the light bulb? Shatter the hopes and dreams of all those who lived in a decaying world. This is your choice. Nico will listen no matter what you do. I always wondered, however, what would Nico have done had we not been here? This choice affects Nico. So Nico should absolutely have a say in this. Which brings us to, when it comes to beloved and meaningful attachments to video game characters, I hold Nico in the highest of regards. Nico is a beacon of innocence surrounded by gloom and darkness. They find themselves in a world that is not their own. They push on to find a way out because they know their mother is waiting for them. They walk through this abandoned wasteland, and the first person who they find starts talking about prophecy and how Nico is this great messiah. Nico responds to this moment with class, simply stating that they want to go home. They are a child, they don't belong here, and they just want to go home. Unable to deny its programming, he cannot help Nico. The next person Nico meets tells them that this world is decaying, and Nico should just allow the world to die naturally. What a morbid thing to say. Still, Silver was much more helpful than Prophetbot, and she even attempted to give Nico hope. They are young, but filled with a sense of determination and responsibility. We have the ability to perceive Nico's dreams, and through this, we understand that they want nothing more than to go home. Numerous times, they talk about their home and what it means to them. They talk about where they come from. Everyone remembers their home, the place that they remember before anything else. In sharing our story of our home, we connect with Nico on a level of privilege. Both Nico and we know what it is like to live in sunshine. Our world has a sun, same as theirs, and we connect in knowing the suffering which has befallen this world that has gone without it. Together we make progress on our journey, and even more they are witness to the suffering of this world, from the discovery of maize on her deathbed to helping Calamus find his lost sister, from the stories of the land and how it is breaking away to how the food supplies are running low. I believe that Nico was inspired by maize, her sacrifice, her determination to survive for the sake of other people, inspired by Calamus raising his little sister despite being so young himself. By the time we get to Refuge, Nico is more than convinced that this is what they need to do. This is a responsibility. Nico learns throughout their journey that no matter how bad things are, no matter how desperate the situation is for these people, they are still here, surviving. Nevertheless, Nico is still a child. They miss their mama. Nico explains that they haven't eaten anything in a very long time. The pancakes which Ling makes for them makes their stomach lurch. The agonizing nostalgia calls them home and they can't bear this burden anymore. The weight of the world is literally on Nico's shoulders. It's not right, it's not fair, but this is the case. Nico is a brave little kid, and I want what's best for them. After everything they saw, after everything they went through, I think I know what Nico would choose. Nico cares about their home, but Nico cares about these people too. Prophet, Silver, Alula, Calamus, George, Kip, all of these people try their best to live their life to the fullest. Nico is one of the most endearing characters I have ever had the pleasure of talking to. The simple yet charming stories about their home, the look of awe that they give when they experience new things, it inspires a childlike warmness that I think a lot of people take for granted. It's that level of warmness that makes me believe that if Nico was here, and if they didn't have to listen to us, I truly believe they would put the sun back. We can't just leave everyone here to die. While you make your final choice, the same droning music plays from the very beginning of your journey. If you walk over to the wall, Nico will mention just how small everything looks below. I'm not here to argue which option is the best or the most ethical. Both kinda stink in their own way. The question is, why? Why is it like this? I've had my theories about this for a long time, so I guess now would be the best time to speak them. Nico's eyes glow with a bright, vibrant yellow. They glow so bright that I believe that this could be a super rare form of yellow phosphor. The feather of the prophet was filled with yellow phosphor, so it isn't a strange idea that yellow phosphor could exist in a biological state. I believe that is the reason why Nico needs to stay here with the sun, because as strong as the tower is, it still needs a source of power, and Nico is that source. Almost every single time the light bulb has lit up, Nico has been near it. They are the source of power that will fuel the new sun. Every time they pick up the light, it glows a bright yellow. If the light bulb is ever left alone for too long, the light will eventually fade away until Nico returns. So, Nico must stay. If you don't carry out the prophecy, the sun will be destroyed and Nico will leave through your desktop. But if you return the sun, the world will light up like it hasn't in years. The people you met along your journey, even the newborn plant spirit, Maize's daughter, look up into the sky in awe of this gift that has been given to them. The game ends with the room you started in. Beautiful, vibrant sunlight pierces through the window, and Nico is nowhere to be found. This game has the perfect bittersweet ending. Not too sad, not too cheerful. You were given one shot, and you stuck with it to the end. I would like to thank each and every one of you for watching part 1 of the ultimate one-shot analysis. I haven't even touched on the solstice update, which I intend to do in part 2. Honestly, I'm sorry. I'm not even gonna try to give an excuse. This is my fault. For the month of October, I took on the self-imposed goal of putting out 3 long-form videos for the month. I figured, hey, October is one of the longest months out of the year, so I could just spend 10 days on a video, right? No. I honestly thought that if I tried hard enough, I could get 3 videos out for October. However, I'm looking at the clock right now, and as I'm finishing up this recording, it's November 1st. From now on, I think I'm just going to stop giving myself deadlines, because it's very clear that I can't meet those deadlines. Part 2 of the ultimate one-shot analysis will be coming out when it's done. In part 2 of my one-shot analysis, we will cover the solstice update, and I will give my final analysis on the overall themes of the game, and the narrative universe conversation needs to go somewhere, right? Part 2 will also give me a chance to reassess everything I missed in part 1, because I'm pretty sure I missed something. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope to see you in part 2. So, thank you all so much for watching. Goodbye.